Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. In this video, we're going to talk about the realities of cover. Part of defensive shooting is learning how to use cover, learning how to identify cover. As instructors, we use training aids. I'm sure you're familiar with this thing if you've taken a class or seen a video of a class, or maybe you just got the directions offline, build it yourself. Most popular one being the VTAC wall. It's a notch wall, ladder wall. There's a lot of different terminology for it, but basically what it is it gives you an object that you can shoot from behind that simulates a lot of different potential exposures to teach you how to work your weapon, be it handgun, rifle, shotgun, whatever, from different elevations, from different positions, and with increased difficulty. Because obviously it's going to be easier to use this whole side than it is, say, one of the small holes down there. And of course, everyone is familiar with the blue barrels. There's blue barrels in every range, pretty much worldwide, outdoor ranges. In fact, I'm pretty sure that company makes most of their money off the firearms industry. This range has these things. I'm sure you've seen these before on roads. They usually tell you, stay out of this lane or whatever. These were obviously involuntarily donated to this range. I don't know how they got here. I don't know anything about it, but they're here. Both of these things are great training aids. They're just like targets, paper targets. They allow us to shoot at a form that simulates real life. This is designed to simulate real life. The only problem is neither of these objects really replicate the common cover that's available to the average person. I'm in no way trying to insult anyone's intelligence. My point is, as instructors, we have to do a very good job of teaching our students cover and realistic cover. Realistic cover, well, first let's talk about what is cover. What is the definition of cover? The commonly held definition is any object that's going to stop incoming fire. That definition is only half correct. The actual definition of cover is any object that will, with high likelihood, stop incoming fire for an indeterminate amount of time. You may be like, well, what are you talking about? Some objects will stop incoming fire, but there's a time frame on that. Obviously, a 600-pound granite boulder is probably going to stop incoming fire for as long as you need it, unless you're being shot at with some kind of anti-materiel rifle. Handguns, rifles, it's going to stop it. But a brick wall, a simple red brick wall, like something you'd see outside of a house or on a curb or something like that, 308 is going to eat through that pretty quickly. Handgun is going to eat through it eventually. Cinder block, if it's hollow cinder block, it may only stop 1 or 2 rounds. If that. So cover will stop rounds for an indeterminate amount of time. If you've never taken a ballistics lab, a class that actually shoots objects, then there's some objects that with high likelihood you may assume they'll stop incoming fire, but they may not. When I teach blocks of instruction on cover, I like to cover, no pun intended, commonality. I like to get people thinking about the places they spend most of their time, where they work, where they live, where they travel to, the malls they go to, the theaters they go to, things of that nature. And thinking about what is cover, and then ask them the next time they're there, verify that those objects are in fact cover. Really good example is one of our local malls here in Atlanta. There's these square pillars, as I'll show you, throughout the building. They're marble. Well, some of them are designed to look like marble. It's a facade. It's not actually marble. Talked to one of the maintenance guys and asked him if he knew anything about the pillars, and he says that the center of the pillar itself is an I-beam. But the actual exterior of that pillar is just plastic designed to look like marble. So instead of the 22 inches guesstimating of cover I thought I had, if I had to use that particular pillar, I've actually only got about 8, and it's right in the middle. These things matter. Now again, we have to factor in what is our likelihood of, 1, being in a self-defense shooting, and then 2, needing cover or having time to get to cover in that self-defense shooting. So I understand that there's a lot of variables that go into this conversation. You may be thinking, Aaron, you're finally getting too pedantic. And maybe I am. But I feel like us as instructors need to do a better job of teaching cover and teaching students to expect that their cover is not going to be as ideal as maybe something like this notch wall would have them believe. No matter what position I shoot from behind this wall, I can still get my whole body and maybe one or two other people back there with me. Where realistically, one of the most common cover objects I may find, such as a pressure-treated power pole or a fire hydrant, it's not big enough to cover my body at all. It basically takes up the same amount of space as body armor would, at least horizontally speaking. And in the manner of the pressure-treated pole, those edges may not be covered at all. The closer you get to the thicker part of the pole, the more cover is provided. So if you're still with me, and I got your gears turning thinking about this, well, let's just take a look around places I commonly go, and let's see what's covered. Because on the range, I have this cool wall.
And this is a fire hydrant. This is actually a really good source cover, kind of already mentioned that. And it's a little bit more realistic than what you're going to find that's available versus the larger objects that we wish were there. In this situation, this time and place, if I needed to use something as cover, I've got this tiny little tree and I've got this solid piece of iron. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. But as you can see, it does cover a great deal of my vital areas. So, body armor. It's going to give you the same amount of protection size-wise as body armor would. Actually, a little bit more, since I can get, if I crouch down, my full body behind it. Is it comical? A little bit, but remember the rule. If it's stupid and it works, it can't be stupid. Is it going to work for your situation? I don't have a crystal ball, but I want people to start thinking about, if they're not already thinking about it, that objects of this size, even though they're not conveniently large enough to get our entire body behind, can still provide enough cover to give us an advantage in a lethal force encounter. Some parks and outdoor areas are going to provide ample cover in the form of trees. Of course, that's very location dependent. A gas station is a place where everybody's going to go at some point, but besides the obvious support pillars for an overhead canopy or the gas pumps themselves, there isn't a whole lot of cover besides, again, what you bring with you, such as the vehicle. And obviously a gas pump is not an ideal object to cover just because of that worry of the fact that gunfire could potentially ignite the gas pumps, which of course would be a Mythbusters episode and not an episode for something on my channel. But again, it just goes back to the fact that nothing is going to be as convenient as you want it to be, and nothing is going to be as large as you want it to be, unless you just happen to get lucky based on chance, circumstance, situation, time, and place. Busy city street, wide sidewalks. There's cover available, but the distance from cover to cover is far more extreme than maybe you're used to, and some of the objects don't readily present themselves as traditional cover. Another city street, wide sidewalks, storefronts, not much available. And what is available, again, is small or inconvenient. But I did find a training aid, so that's kind of cool. Now this is a massively empty parking lot. This is basically, to underscore the fact that sometimes cover just doesn't exist unless you brought it with you in the form of a vehicle. In this situation, if for some reason you found yourself in an environment that's completely devoid of cover or only offers concealment, maybe your best option for cover would be accurate gunfire. Obviously, this is a little bit more realistic parking lot. I come back to parking lots because they're a very common place that you may spend your time. You're going to park in one, especially if you go out shopping. You can't buy everything online. Everybody's going to go to a grocery store or a Walmart or a Target or something like that. They're going to find themselves in situations where they just have to use a parking lot. This parking lot affords some deal of cover besides what a vehicle may offer. But of course, that's going to be, did you park close enough to it, and does the situation allow you to access it? One thing parking lots are going to have is cars, lots and lots of cars, varying number based on situation, time, and place. If you haven't taken a vehicle class, especially a class that actually shows you and allows you to experience ballistics on the body of the vehicle, to actually see what stops bullets, what doesn't stop bullets, instead of just depending on myths and things people learn from movies that they pass on as truths or half-truths or facts or things their buddy knows. Experience it for yourself. Get out and take an actual vehicle class allows you to do that. I think the common theme, as you've seen, is that some things are conveniently sized, but more often than not, cover is not nearly as large as we'd like it to be, and it may not be nearly as large as what you practice on, the objects that you're using to practice the use of cover.
Now, I didn't cherry pick locations. I just randomly drove around with the camera to kind of give you an idea of worst case and best case scenario. Some situations are going to afford you a great deal of options when it comes to cover. Some situations are going to afford you, as you saw, literally no cover at all other than what you bring with you, such as a vehicle. And the vehicle's cover and concealment is a totally different video subject. As you can see, the situation is going to dictate what cover is available, just like real life. You do not control, by large part, where a potential shooting will occur, if one's going to happen at all. So the cover that's available to you is going to be based on the environment in which you're in. We can't live our lives only being like, I'm not going to go there because there's really not any really good cover available. But what I am saying is the places where you do spend a lot of time, your neighborhoods, your neighborhood, the mall, theaters, shopping centers, parking lots, workplace, parking lots, your own home, anywhere that you're going to frequent, identify the objects around there that are likely to provide a good amount of cover. The majority of people get most of their subconscious education on what is and isn't cover from television, movies, and video games. Now, the intelligent shooter can identify inherently what is or isn't likely to stop incoming fire. But you have to be absolutely sure when you're thinking about those things, do you understand what an object is, what it's made out of, and what its characteristics are that are going to lend itself well to providing cover. Size is probably the biggest determining factor in that can shortcut a really quick decision. If I know for certain that my only cover available, for example, is a fire hydrant, then I can get behind it. Fire hydrant is going to provide you at least decent vital protection. But if you've never considered the fire hydrant because you've only used these conveniently sized objects, you may lose a quarter to a half a second, or maybe never even consider the fire hydrant at all based on practice or how you were trained to use cover.
I don't want to get esoteric on anything, but something we need to consider is all the range training we do really needs to apply to real life. You can't have a reality-based focus if you don't really think about how these things apply to real life. What you're looking at now is just a walk through the street. I live in a very urban area, so for me, the considerations that I take into account are going to be those common places where I'm most likely to spend my time, and especially environments where I frequent them, or I'm familiar with them, or it's somewhere where I have history with, I know the layout, I know the floor plan. I make considerations of what are these things made of, what's available, what's there. The alternative to that is to just ignore my surroundings, and in the unlikely but possible event that I do need cover, it takes me longer to process a situation, identify what is and what is not cover. Any object is better than no object because at the very least, I'll get concealment out of it. But I'd much rather find myself in a situation where I had a knowledgeable choice based on the situation and the objects that were afforded and available to me. Sometimes just assessing your environment goes a long way towards giving you a more beneficial edge in the event that you could need that environment to protect yourself or protect someone else. Your environment is going to vary, the situations you find yourself in, and if it's a brand new environment versus an environment that you've been in 100 times. If it's an environment you've been in 100 times, autopilot can be a very dangerous thing, but if you've assessed the environment, then you at least have an understanding of what is and isn't cover. We in the shooting community, we love to talk about situational awareness and being ready and OODA loop and things of that nature. But have you considered not just situational awareness looking for threats and looking for wolves or whatever terminology you want to use, but actually weighing the environment itself? And again, don't want to be esoteric talking about it, but sometimes just being situationally aware, spatially aware, can go a long way towards identifying things that are out of place, which goes back to situational awareness in general. But more than that, identifying the best position of advantage to be in if a situation occurs where you need it.
To reiterate, I don't want to get wrapped around the axle. I don't want anyone to get wrapped around the axle. But I want you to really think knowledgeably about cover and training and practicing to use cover, especially practicing. manipulating cover of inconvenient sizes is going to be far more beneficial to you than manipulating a cover that is a luxurious size. If I've got, like the notch wall, it's very ample. I've got a lot of room to work back there. I do not have to compact myself into an inconvenient or uncomfortable position to work the gun from behind that piece of cover. If all I have available to me is a 12-inch diameter pole, or 16-inch diameter pole, or a small one of those concrete flower pots you see in front of some stores or the airport or what have you, that's a lot less room to work with. Think about worst case scenarios and train from there, because I would much rather be prepared to work worst case scenario cover and then be lucky enough for the situation to present me with a much larger piece of cover than to only practice using cover that is huge, and then in the moment, in the situation, there's a perfectly usable piece of cover that I just don't mentally identify because I've never even considered the fact that even though it's small, it will afford me more protection than I would have otherwise. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.